connect for a few minutes with Matt Jones. Does a great job, Kentucky Sports Radio, as the Wildcats are back in the Sweet 16. They will be in action on Friday evening at 7:39, a very prompt start of 7:39 p.m. Eastern time up against Tennessee as they'll try to beat the Volunteers for the third time this season and punch their ticket to the Elite Eight. Matt, appreciate the time as always. How you been?
I'm doing amazing, and if you show up at 7:38 expecting basketball, you're going to be sadly disappointed, Zach. We start promptly in Indianapolis.
So let me start you off, first off, with what happened over the weekend. Clearly, everyone thought they were going to beat Troy. I didn't know what to expect with Illinois. Underwood always has a good program. Casper there is a very good player, probably going to be a top 10 pick in the draft. Just how about that impressive, dominant performance that we saw from the Wildcats? What was a big moment on the national stage for Mark Pope?
Well, first of all, you're a lot more confident than me if you knew they were going to beat Troy. I watched them lose to St. Peter's and Oakland in 2 of the last 3 years. So, new coach. I thought the Troy win was important just to get that kind of monkey off their back. And then Illinois, I expected Illinois to give Kentucky more problems than they did. Kentucky's defense was probably the best it has been all season. Kasparis, the top 10 guy you were talking about, never really was able to get started. Probably more importantly, Will Riley, who might also be a first-round pick, he only made 1 basket. So I thought Kentucky played really well, and it was important they win. I mean, you mentioned Arkansas with Cal had made it, BYU, where Pope had been, had made it. So I think it was big for Kentucky and for Mark Pope to get the win. And now they play a Tennessee team that they've already played twice this year, beat them both times, but Tennessee played really terribly both games, and I'm not sure that that's going to happen a third time, so I think it's going to be a tough game.
If Kentucky loses to Tennessee, and let's say it's a respectable game and they lose by like a 3 at the buzzer, how do you think people will look back at year 1 of the Mark Pope era?
I don't even think it has to be a 3 at the buzzer. I mean, Kentucky fans all consider this a massive success. I mean, you have to remember, John Calipari had not gotten out of the second round since 2019. Going into this season, since COVID, Kentucky had 1 NCAA tournament win, and more importantly, and just as important, 1 SEC tournament win. I mean, they had been awful. And basically Cal had really made the entire fan base mad with a lot of things that are beyond like what we want to get into. But he just, like, fans were done with him. So while Cal having some success at Arkansas, they were bad most of the year, but they did turn it around. While that, I understand the comparison, the reality is Kentucky was done with Cal. Mm-hmm. So because of that, this was a new team, new guys. I mean, they have players playing from Drexel, Fairleigh Dickinson, Oklahoma, San Diego State. This was not a murderer's row. So I think a lot of Kentucky fans went into the season going, let's just make the tournament. So getting to the Sweet 16, having a really good year throughout the year. They were good all season. I think this is a success, even if they lose to Tennessee. Now, Tennessee is their rival. You don't want to lose to a rival, but if there was ever a time I think fans could get over it, it's this time.
What has impressed you the most this year? Because obviously everyone's rooting for Mark Pope, right? He's one of their own. He's a very nice guy. Is what coaching should be like in the year of 2025. But seeing it in person for a year with how plugged in you are, what has really impressed you the most or surprised you with Mark Pope?
Great offensive mind. I mean, the offense they run, he basically runs an NBA offense, like a Golden State Warriors kind of offense in college. Lots of zoom action. They got a ton of like what they call Peja cuts. Guys like with the pick and pop. I mean, they're playing an NBA offense in the modern sense, and they do it with great shooters. I mean, when you watch the game, when you watch it Thursday night, Kentucky runs their offense through the center at the top of the key, which is something like you see Jokic do and Draymond, but there are not a lot of guys that can do it. Amari Williams basically runs the offense from the top of the key, and I think it's been really impressive. Look, Calipari was a master motivator, great recruiter. But I don't think it's insane to say his offense is a little behind the times. So watching guys run this kind of offense at the college level has been really impressive. Now, defensively, they got work to do. But offensively, this has been a top 10 offense all year, and it's been really fun to watch.
What's the feel right now with Kentucky fans? I know it's tough to get an entire pulse on it, but if you had to say the majority of Kentucky fans say they view John Calipari right now as what, Matt Jones?
A guy who did a lot of successful things here, but stayed 4 years too long, right? I think, Cal, when he first got here, said this is a 10-year job, and I think he proved that correct because he had an amazing 10 years, and then the last 5 years stunk. And I think that's just the truth. This is a hard job. It weighs on people. There's a lot that goes into it. And I think he kind of just wore out his welcome. With that said, I don't think Kentucky fans hate him. I think that's kind of a misnomer nationally. I think they were ready for it to end. The moment he's done at Arkansas, I think fans will be willing to embrace him again. But it was time. And because it was time, I think it was best for both parties that they separate.
Yeah, and it ended up working out for both parties, right? I thought it was time for Cal to reset and also Kentucky to reset, and now they're both in the Sweet 16, and then you also have BYU in the Sweet 16. I think it's actually a rare moment in sports. We're always focused on winners and losers, and one team's got to win, and they got to do so emphatically. Everyone kind of won here.
I totally agree with you. I mean, I thought – I knew BYU would win because they got the guy from the Suns who brought a huge NIL donor. I mean, they're going to have as much money as anybody in the country for NIL. They're going to be great. Arkansas, I didn't know because Cal started so poorly and he looked miserable. The team looked miserable, but that he walked into Rupp Arena, got that win. It turned their season around, so that really worked for them. And then Pope was exactly what this fan base needed. I think Kentucky's going to kill it in the portal. I think what you're seeing, Zach, is in college basketball, there's a lot of different ways to win now. Used to be basically you either won with one-and-dones or a 4-year team, and that's it. Now you can win through the portal. You can win with freshmen like Duke did. You can do with a combination like Purdue, all guys that come from the same system. You can do like Houston and go find the toughest dudes in the world and wait till they're 24 and then beat people up. There's a lot of different ways to win, and I actually think I have the controversial view that the portal and NIL has made college basketball a much better sport. Now, football, that's a little different for a variety of reasons. But I think in basketball, the sport is much more entertaining, and the quality of play is much higher because of the portal and NIL, and I think it's actually kind of rejuvenated college basketball.
And I don't think one tournament defines what the future years are going to be like. I see people saying, the Cinderella's dead. A Cinderella could pop back up next year. I just think we've been spoiled since 2018 with 2 number 1 seeds going down. I think you had 3 number 2 seeds going down. Those things are anomalies. Those things aren't supposed to happen. And also, with only 1 double-digit seed remaining, and you kind of even saw it in the round of 32 how much better the games were. And with that double-digit seed being Arkansas with Calipari, I think we're going to get a sensational final 2 weeks of the college basketball season.
I agree. Look, people made way too big conclusions, and it's all people, Zach, who don't watch college basketball, like Stephen A. Smith going, stop it. Let's remember that until 2018, a number 1 seed had never lost, and then 2 of them lost in 4 years. That was not normal, right? All these 15s beating 2s. That was not normal. It was a unique situation. This is a little more chalky than normal, but not crazy. This has happened before, so I don't think it's insane. Here's what's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to have a mid-major program like Butler was 15 years ago that's good every year. That's going to be hard. But in a given year, there are still going to be mid-majors that win. If you watch McNeese, they dominated Clemson in that game. But the reality is the tournament is great if you have upsets on day 1 and 2. But then in the Sweet 16, you want the big boys playing. The games are better that way. You need Duke. You need Kentucky. You need Kansas is out. But you need teams like that. They have it this year. I look at all 8 of those matchups, and I think every single one of them is going to be a good game. And that is very, very rare. And I think you have a chance to have a Final Four with 4 powerhouse teams. And I think that makes it, again, I think it's better for the sport.
Who do you think ultimately gets to the Final Four? Just wondering.
I'm kind of a believer in all the one seeds. I know it's chalk, but this year more than any year I can remember, I think the one seeds are better than everybody else. I think Florida wins the West relatively easily. Auburn is, Michigan State can get them, but I'll still take Auburn. I think Houston's the best team in Kentucky's bracket. I think Alabama's going to give Duke all they want if they get there. I think Alabama can put up huge points, but in the end, I think it'll be the one. And I think Duke and Florida probably play for the championship, and I'm going to take Florida to win.
So I had Chris Beard on yesterday, wrap it up with Matt Jones, and it gives a typical coach answer like, oh, we're just getting started at Ole Miss. I'm not expecting him to say that he's going to stay there forever, but they're just getting started. That was the way when we talked about his future. You look at Nate Oates at Alabama, who's done a remarkable job, and in 2 years, Chris Beard's done a remarkable job at Ole Miss. You covering the SEC as religiously as you do, how do you kind of handicap those two guys staying at their current schools and how long you think?
Nate Oates will stay. A lot of money, a lot of NIL. I think he could have sniffed the Kentucky job if he wanted it, and he's going to stay. Now, Chris Beard's a little different. Ole Miss doesn't have the NIL resources of a lot of these other schools, so I could see him leaving for the right job one day. But here's the thing, man. The SEC is where it is in basketball right now. I mean, these coaches, in 2015, when Kentucky went 38-1, the league besides Kentucky sucked. And now this league, 14 teams made it. And you know what? 14 teams deserved it. And South Carolina was the worst team in the conference, and they beat Clemson earlier this year. This league is where it is, and this is more complicated than this show. But I think the SEC has replaced the ACC as the basketball league, and I think this is going to happen year after year. The SEC and the Big Ten are going to dominate the sport.
Then the last thing I'll ask you, how about in football? Because, we all know SEC and Big Ten are the two preeminent conferences. The Big Ten has won the last two national championships. Does the Big Ten have the SEC's number right now when it comes to football slightly?
Only at the top. Look, Ohio State and Michigan are, to me, SEC schools in the Big Ten. They have SEC speed. They have SEC talent. Penn State is kind of close to that. But the difference between the SEC and the Big Ten is you get down to like Minnesota, Rutgers, and those teams in the SEC, they stink. They're in the Big Ten. In the SEC, Kentucky beat Ole Miss and played Georgia to the final moment.
And Oklahoma's now like one of those stinker schools too, which is crazy.
Exactly. Like the difference between the SEC and the Big Ten is not at the top. At the top, they're both about the same. The difference is in the middle and at the bottom. And the SEC middle and bottom would crush the Big Ten. So the Big Ten, yes, at the top, just as good. It's the rest of the conference where the league shows its strength, in my opinion.
By the way, last thing I'll bring up to you, good FaceTime for you. Mark Pope came on this show, and he's like, oh, I love your intro music, the best intro music in radio. And then I'm watching the game the other day. He's running off the court. He's dapping you up after a big victory.
Yeah, well, listen, for John Calipari at the end thought I was the devil, so it was nice. It's nice to have a coach that thinks a little bit differently. But Mark's a great dude. And I think he's going to do a great job here. My view is put all else aside, give me people who are smart. And Mark Pope's one of the smartest people I've been around in sports.
One of the best of the business, Matt Jones from Kentucky Sports Radio. Matt, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, man.